Thanks, Chris, for having me in your Growth 2.0 Labs lecture series. I'm happy to be here today to talk about augmented intelligence as a more powerful form of artificial intelligence than automated intelligence. Our goal is to create transformational outcomes, and the question is, what is the best way to do that? Now, if we ask the average person on the street, where do you think that they get their notion of what is AI? What is artificial intelligence? Well, there are many different sources. Perhaps many of you would go out and look on Wikipedia or Google for the term and as to what it means. But I will tell you that the average person on the street, they get their source of information primarily from Hollywood. You look at Blade Runner and Terminator 2, and one of the first movies that included AI concept was Metropolis back to 1927. And it was about robots and humans coexisting. We're more than 90 years later after that movie. Is Metropolis now reality, right? We need to make sure that we're defining AI as we want it to be, not allowing vendors or Hollywood to define what is AI. The problem is there's a huge amount of hype associated to artificial intelligence. This chart was created by Alexander Linden, a Gartner analyst from Germany, and he talks about the idea that this hype cycle where when new technologies come onto the foreground, the expectations rise and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and goes to what's called the peak of overinflated expectations, which is where you see deep learning right now. Now, eventually what happens is all those very high expectations have been set by the consultants and the vendors. Reality sets in, and then you crash into the trough of disillusionment. Well, I'll tell you right now, AI is like off the ski slopes. It's exceeded even the normal peak of inflated expectations. And that means that the crash will be even harder when eventually we get to the point where reality sets in. When we define what is AI, there are many definitions. We could define AI artificial intelligence, although we don't really exactly know what that means, artificial intelligence. I'll give a definition based on some work that Alan Turing did many, many decades ago. But most of us will think about automated intelligence. How do we automate the things that humans do using software and mathematics? But I'm going to propose augmented intelligence as a better definition of what is AI. This is about humans and software working together. The reality is, if you are trying to acquire AI, the vendors will tell you it's whatever you want it to be. And yet we need to define what is AI, not let the vendors define what is AI. Definition of artificial intelligence. One notion is, can machines think? And the answer to that is no, machines don't think. But Alan Turing had a better variation on this question. He's a brilliant mathematician from England, and he was instrumental in the development of a lot of these ideas. And his alternate definition is, can machines do what we as thinking entities can do, what we as humans can do? And the answer is yes, sometimes. And I'm going to propose to you that decisions that humans can make in 3 seconds or less, AI software will be able to make those decisions better, faster, and cheaper in the future. Better, faster, cheaper than humans. Now, does that mean we're going to replace all humans? That's the point that I would like to explore in this short discussion. And I'll give you the answer up front. The answer is no. Humans do a lot of creative thinking that software cannot do. So those decisions that get made in 3 seconds or less, things like self-driving cars, where you're putting the foot on the gas or the foot on the brakes, or accessing your turn signal, those decisions when you're driving get made in 3 seconds or less. Those decisions can be made better, faster, cheaper with AI software than by humans. But when it comes to creativity, when it comes to solving problems that you haven't seen before, humans are going to be much, much better at that. If we look at AI as automated intelligence, I would argue that we are not actually doing anything transformational. Yes, of course, we can automate expense report processing and answering of repetitive questions in a chat box and make simple recommendations. And these types of AI definitely have measurable return on investment because they allow you to do things at a lower cost, but they are not game changers. They are not transformational. I think that the transformational uses of AI software are when we're using to enhance human intelligence to deliver smarter answers, not the same answers, cheaper, but smarter answers. So we're going to talk about much more significant areas of innovation: medical diagnosis and pathways of care, condition-based maintenance, assisted driving as opposed to completely automated driving, search optimization. Transformational outcomes happen when we do things better, not just cheaper. And this is a core thesis of the discussion that we're having this morning. Stunning success in classification. This is what's happened over the last 10 plus years. Human performance for many tasks is, been relatively constant. Yes, of course, we can get better with education and so on, but the improvement in deep learning has been absolutely phenomenal. Now, what's interesting here is let's take medical diagnosis. If a doctor looks at an X-ray image to determine if the patient, for example, has a cancerous tumor, doctors will typically get it right 95% of the time, and that's pretty good. But 5% for something so important, that's a margin error that we would like to reduce. And of course, that's why you would go to second opinions, because if you go to a second opinion, then perhaps the second doctor might see something that the first doctor did not. And so you can reduce the error of that 95% by combining those two doctors. But humans tend to have the same biases in the things that they miss. If you use deep learning software, then you can actually get the diagnosis to a 97% accuracy. So the software is better than the human. I want my next doctor to be software, not human. But actually, I'm lying to you. What I really want is them to work together. If the doctor and the software work together, the accuracy of the diagnosis is 99.5%. When we can bring the superpowers of AI and humans together, then we get truly amazing outcomes. And there are lots and lots of applications across many industries where this idea of augmented intelligence is very, very powerful. Looking at predictive maintenance in automotive. When you go to a mechanic and the mechanic says, turn the key on a car, let me listen to the engine. And they say, wow, you've got a loose fan belt, that's the problem. And you think to yourself, how did that person do that? How did she know by listening to the engine of the car that it was a loose fan belt? Well, she has a lot of intelligence built up over many years of working with those vehicles and being able to identify by listening to the sound of the vehicle that the problem is the loose fan belt. Well, you can train the software to do similar things. But in the end, for complex problem solving, the software will help identify possibilities. The human will then narrow the possibilities and do the problem solving. Working together, they will do better. This happens in healthcare and image-based diagnoses, in drug discovery. Augmented intelligence is much more powerful than automated intelligence. Just think to yourself about autonomous driving. How soon will we have purely autonomous cars on the road, driving with no human touching the steering wheel or any of the controls of the car, versus augmented intelligence, which you see on the right side? Well, I'll give you a hint. The augmented intelligence is already happening. So the human is actually driving the vehicle, very often large trucks that are delivering product or raw materials. And that truck driver is actually using virtual reality in order to steer the truck. But the main controls are the artificial intelligence software showing what is going on, and so on. And the human and the software are working better together. The purely automated intelligence on the left side will eventually emerge, but we're not there yet. So if you want access to transformational outcomes and you want them sooner, think about augmented intelligence rather than purely automated intelligence. The scenario delivers value first is where the humans and the software are working together. And that's true for autonomous driving. It's also true for the diagnoses where doctors and software are working together. It's true for the diagnoses on machines where the expert mechanic or industrial engineer is working together with the software. Man is the lowest cost, 150-pound, non-linear, all-purpose computer system which can be mass-produced by unskilled labor that exists in the world. And this is a quote actually from NASA in 1965. Human intelligence is all around us, and we need to leverage that human intelligence. But AI superpowers in the software are also very powerful. We can process much more data than any human could possibly comprehend, deal with very high dimensionality in the data, outliers that often confuse human decision maker. We can learn much faster, and we can process data much faster. These are AI superpowers that are held by the software. When we combine the AI superpowers with human intelligence, we get augmented intelligence. Superhuman insights from AI software plus human ability to reason and adapt, which is not something that we have today with purely automated intelligence. So the thoughts that I would like to leave you with are two quotes to put this discussion in context. AI does not put people out of business, it puts skills out of business. So those things that are, highly repetitive, things that we can codify and we can learn and do not require a lot of very fast adaptive thinking, software will do that better than humans. But when there's problem solving involved to address new situations as they arise, when there is creative thinking required, then the human is going to do better than the software. Humans and software need each other. So my last thought to leave you with is over the next decade, AI is not going to replace managers, but managers who use AI will replace those that don't. Think about that as you formulate your strategy for AI to deliver transformational outcomes. Augmented intelligence outperforms automated intelligence when you're trying to truly transform your organization. Thank you very much for spending your time with me this morning.